Picture Christmas Eve 1962. You're tucked up in bed, excitement buzzing through you despite the cold. Tomorrow's Christmas, gifts under the tree, turkey in the oven, family gathering round. But you wake Boxing Day morning and the world has changed. Ice patterns cover your bedroom window, but these aren't the delicate ferns you're used to. This is thick, opaque ice you can barely see through. Your breath doesn't just mist, it hangs in the air like smoke from a bonfire. You reach out from under the heavy blankets, your fingernails scraping the frost, but it's too thick. You can't see through it at all. Downstairs, you hear your dad already up, fighting with the coal fire. The familiar sounds, newspaper crinkling, kindling snapping, his muttered curses when the damp coal won't catch. Outside on the doorstep, the milk bottles stand frozen solid, the cream pushed up through the foil caps like little white mushrooms made of ice. The wireless crackles to life. Heavy snowfall reported across southern and central England. Temperatures well below seasonal averages. Travellers are advised. Nobody knew it yet, but winter had just begun. Not the winter, the winter. For the next 10 weeks, Britain would be gripped by the coldest, longest freeze since 1740. 223 years of winters had come and gone, and nothing had been this brutal. If you lived through the winter of 1963, prepare yourself. These next few minutes will transport you back to being 7 years old, scratching your name in the ice on your bedroom window, back to being 12, walking to school through snow that came up to your waist, back to being 17, helping your dad shovel coal while your mum worried about supplies running out, the cold that got into your bones and stayed there for months, the snow that turned your street into another planet, the one warm room where your entire family huddled, the taste of frozen milk thawed by the fire, the sound of snow crunching under your wellies, that specific squeak when it's really, truly cold, the smell of coal smoke that meant safety, warmth, home. For those who remember, this was your winter, the winter that defined what cold really meant, the winter Britain froze solid, but hearts stayed warm. Most families were still full of Christmas dinner on Boxing Day, 1962. The Queen's speech barely over, the Quality Street tin already half empty, everyone settled around that one coal fire in the living room. Dad dozing in his chair, mum knitting, children playing with their new toys on the carpet. Then the snow began. Not gentle Christmas card snow, the kind that makes everything look pretty. This was different. Heavy, relentless, driven by winds that came all the way from Siberia. Thick flakes that didn't drift down. They drove horizontally, pelting the windows, piling up fast. By evening, southern England was buried under 6 inches. Your dad put on his coat and wellies, grabbed the shovel, cleared the path before bed. You watched from the window, your new torch in hand, shining it out at the falling snow. It looked magical in the beam of light. You went to bed excited. Snow, proper snow. Tomorrow you'd build snowmen, have snowball fights, go sledding. You woke to find the path your dad had cleared completely filled in. More snow had fallen overnight. Much more. The garden fence had disappeared. The shed was just a white mound. The whole street looked different, softer, quieter, strange. New Year came and the cold deepened. Temperatures dropped to -19 Celsius in some places. -19. Your bedroom thermometer couldn't go that low. The wash froze, seawater turning to ice, something that almost never happened. Rivers stopped flowing, solid from bank to bank. The Thames slowed, chunks of ice floating downstream like something from a geography lesson about the Arctic. Every morning you'd walk to the window expecting it to stop, expecting to wake up and find the thaw had begun, the snow melting, everything returning to normal. But it didn't stop. Day after day, week after week, Britain locked in ice. The sound became familiar. That specific crunch under your wellies when snow is really cold, packed hard, a squeak almost. Walk anywhere and you heard it. Everyone heard it. That sound meant cold, proper cold. the way your nostrils froze when you breathed in through your nose. You learned quickly to breathe through your scarf, your mouth, anything to warm the air before it hit your lungs. Otherwise it stung, sharp, painful. The sting of cold air on your teeth when you forgot and opened your mouth wide, like biting into ice cream too fast, but worse, everywhere. Inside wasn't much better. Yes, there was the fire, the one coal fire in the living room, but everywhere else, the rest of the house might as well have been outside. Your bedroom so cold you could see your breath all day, not just in the morning, all day. The condensation from your breathing freezing on the inside of the windows overnight, adding to the ice already there. Getting dressed became a tactical operation. You laid your clothes out the night before at the foot of your bed. Sometimes you put your coat on top of the blankets for extra weight, extra warmth. In the morning, you'd get dressed under the covers. Vest first, then shirt, then jumper, all while staying under the blankets as long as possible, then the dash. The mad dash downstairs, wooden stairs like ice under your feet, even through socks, racing through the freezing hallway, the freezing dining room, into the living room where the fire was, where your mum was already up, kettle on the range if you had one, or hanging over the fire if you didn't. That moment of reaching the warm room, the only warm room, that was relief, physical relief. Your body stopped its shivering, your muscles unclenched. You'd plant yourself in front of the fire, close as you dared, soaking up heat like a plant soaking up sun. Frost on the inside of every window, not just your bedroom, every window in the house, kitchen, bathroom, landing, everywhere. Thick ice you could barely see through. It wasn't pretty frost patterns anymore. This was solid ice, the kind you had to actually scrape off to see outside. Scraping the ice became a morning ritual. Children drew faces in it, wrote their names, messages to each other. The ice falling in chunks onto the windowsill, melting there in little pools if you were lucky enough to have a radiator underneath. Otherwise, it just sat there refreezing. The coal fire was everything, literally everything. Without it, you'd freeze. Simple as that. Your dad was up before dawn every single day, clearing yesterday's ash, laying newspaper, arranging kindling. The paper crumpled just right, not too tight, or it wouldn't catch, not too loose, or it'd burn too fast. Small sticks first, then larger pieces, then finally the coal. If the coal was damp, which it often was, getting it to catch took forever. Him crouched there, newspaper folded to create a draft, holding it across the fireplace opening to draw the flames up. Your mum worrying he'd set himself on fire. The smell of coal smoke, thick, acrid, but somehow comforting, somehow safe. That smell meant warmth. It meant home. Every house in the street, every house in Britain putting out coal smoke. The smell hung over everything, mixing with the cold air, creating that specific winter smell that you can still remember now if you close your eyes. The whole family huddled in one room, the living room. That was where you lived for those 10 weeks. Breakfast eaten there, homework done there, mum's knitting, dad's paper, children playing on the carpet. All of you rotating positions like rotisserie chickens. Back too hot from being too close to the fire, front freezing. You'd turn around, warm your front, freeze your back, turn again. If the fire went out, panic, pure panic. If you'd let it die overnight to save coal, rebuilding it in the morning in a freezing house was misery. Every family had their strategy. Some kept it going low overnight. Others let it die completely, woke to a freezing house and had to rebuild from scratch. Either way, coal was life, and coal was rationed, not officially like during the war, but practically. Deliveries were disrupted, roads impassable. The coal merchant couldn't get through for days, sometimes weeks. Families counted their coal, rationed it, made it last. Some burned furniture when they ran out, books, anything that would catch. You did what you had to do. The bathroom was torture, absolute torture. It wasn't heated, nobody heated bathrooms. You ran in, did your business as fast as possible, ran out, your breath misting, hands numb from the cold. Baths were strategic operations. You'd fill the tub, the water barely warm because the boiler could hardly keep up. Jump in fast, wash faster, get out before you froze. No leisurely soaks, no reading in the tub. In and out quick as possible, then running to the fire wrapped in a towel. The toilet sometimes froze overnight. Water in the bowl turned to ice. The pipes froze regularly. That sound, water suddenly gushing through the ceiling where a pipe had burst. Buckets placed to catch it. Towels stuffed under doors to keep heat in whatever room had the fire. The smell of damp wool drying by the fire, constant. Everyone's coats, scarves, gloves, they'd get wet outside, need drying. But where? No tumble dryers, no heated drying racks, just the fire guard, socks steaming on it, gloves stiff until they warmed up. Your mum's constant battle with wet clothes and nowhere to dry them. The milkman still came. Incredibly, impossibly, he still came. Not every day. Some days the roads were too bad, but most days there he was, trudging through the snow, delivering bottles to doorsteps, bottles frozen solid. You'd open the door to bring them in, and they'd be ice all the way through. The cream pushed up through the foil cap like a frozen mushroom, 2 inches tall sometimes. You couldn't just pour it. You had to bring the bottles in, put them in pans of hot water, wait for them to thaw. Sometimes the bottles shattered from the expansion of ice, milk everywhere. Vegetables in the pantry froze solid, potatoes like rocks, carrots frozen in their sacks. Bread went stale faster in the cold, or sometimes froze if you kept it somewhere too cold, trying to make it last. Your mum defrosting everything by the fire before she could cook it. Hot meals became even more important, not just for nutrition, for warmth. Porridge in the morning, thick and steaming. Stews for dinner, everything cooked until it fell apart. Anything warm, anything that would heat you from the inside. The ration books had barely been put away from the war. That was less than 20 years ago. Some families still had them in drawers, and now dealing with shortages again. Not official rationing, but practical shortages. Lorries couldn't move. Deliveries didn't arrive. Shops ran low. You bought what was there and made it last. The wartime mentality returning. Make do and mend. Waste not, want not. All those phrases your parents knew by heart. The snow itself wasn't pretty Christmas card snow anymore. That had melted or been buried. This was relentless, brutal, wind-driven snow. Hard-packed, icy, difficult. Drifts 15-20 feet high in places. Not exaggerating, actual measurements. Snow piled by wind into enormous drifts that blocked roads, buried cars, swallowed buildings. You'd see photographs in the papers of people standing on snowdrifts level with first-floor windows, cars completely buried. You couldn't tell where the road ended and gardens began. Whole streets disappeared under white. Phone boxes buried to the roof, just the red top sticking out. Pillar boxes the same, just the red top visible in a sea of white. Children could walk on top of garden fences. The snow was packed that hard, that high. You could walk across entire gardens without breaking through, walk on top of hedges, walk level with the tops of cars. That crunching sound everywhere. Everyone walking made it. That specific squeak crunch of hard-packed snow under boots. Unmistakable. The world muffled, quiet, strange. Snow-dampened sound. Voices didn't carry. Traffic, what little there was, sounded distant even when close. Getting to school became an expedition, if school was even open. Many schools closed for weeks. No way for teachers to get there. No way to heat the buildings properly. No way for children to get there safely. If your school was open, walking there required preparation. Your mum wrapped you in layers. Vest, shirt, jumper, another jumper, coat, scarf wrapped twice around your neck and over your mouth, hat pulled low, gloves. You looked like a stuffed toy, barely able to move your arms, and you were still freezing, walking through snow up to your waist in some places, following the paths adults had carved, staying in the packed-down tracks because leaving them meant sinking to your thighs, your wellies filling with snow at the top. Wet, cold, miserable, feet going numb. That specific pain of cold feet. Not quite pain, not quite numbness, something worse than both. Arriving at school half frozen, everyone gathering around radiators that barely worked. Most schools couldn't keep up with heating. The boilers couldn't cope. Classrooms freezing. Lessons conducted in coats and scarves. Teachers wearing gloves with the fingers cut off so they could hold chalk. Children sitting on their hands between writing to keep them warm. Some schools had children share textbooks to keep hands warm. One book between two, taking turns to hold it, the other with hands in pockets, breathing on fingers, stamping feet under desks. Your dad trudging to work through the snow, if he could get there at all. Buses abandoned mid-route, stuck in drifts. Drivers just leaving them, passengers walking the rest of the way or giving up and going home. Trains frozen to tracks. Points frozen, couldn't switch tracks. Trains just stopped where they were. Cars useless, completely useless, left buried for weeks. Why bother digging them out when the roads were impassable anyway? Men walking miles to get to work, or not getting there at all. Factories closing because staff couldn't reach them. Shops running low on supplies because delivery lorries couldn't get through. The coal merchant trying to deliver, sacks hauled through snow on sleds sometimes, men helping each other, strangers helping because you had to, someone's dad with a van that could still move, giving lifts to people walking, everyone helping everyone because there was no other choice. The postman still came, that stubborn British determination. The mail must get through. War, snow, nothing stopped the post. Him walking his route through drifts, sometimes only managing part of his round, but still trying. People watched for him, not just for letters, for the human contact, to see another person, to know they weren't completely cut off from the world. Children watching from windows as he trudged past, waving, him waving back, small human connections that mattered more than usual. Mrs. Jones from number 14 checking on elderly Mr. Patel, taking him hot soup, extra coal from her own dwindling supply. Nobody asked her to, nobody organised it, you just did it. That's what neighbours did, strangers helping dig out cars, not for themselves, for others, forming shoveling parties to clear roads, men coming home from work, grabbing their shovels, going back out to help clear the street, women organising rotas for shopping trips, one person going to the shops, if the shops were open, buying for several families, lists handed over fences, money in envelopes, trust, children sent to check on the old lady at the end of the road. Take this to Mrs. Thompson, make sure she's all right, check her coal box. Kids trudging through snow, delivering soup, bringing back reports. She's fine, her nephew came yesterday. Communities pulling together, because when everyone's suffering, when everyone's in the same situation, pride becomes a luxury you can't afford. Help offered, help accepted, no shame in it. The church hall became a refuge, not just for services, though attendance was up, but open every day, warm, communal, safe, the vicar opening it each morning, families gathering not just for organised events, but just to be together, for warmth, yes, but also for company. Church providing hot drinks, tea, endless tea, sometimes soup, sometimes food if they had it, playing cards, talking, just being together, children playing in the corner while adults sat and talked, the vicar checking who hadn't appeared, making sure nobody was forgotten, making lists of who needed checking on, organising the community response without calling it that. British humour in full force, jokes about penguins in Piccadilly, Eskimos feeling at home in Essex, comparing it to Scott of the Antarctic. At least he didn't have to shovel his path every morning. Gallows humour, but humour nonetheless. Laughing because what else could you do? The wireless helping, the BBC keeping spirits up somehow, weather reports delivered with characteristic understatement. Rather cold conditions expected to continue across most of the country, temperatures remaining well below average, rather cold, Britain frozen solid, rivers turned to ice, people dying from hypothermia, rather cold. But that calm voice was somehow reassuring, that refusal to panic, that very British stoicism. We've been through worse. The war was worse. The Blitz was worse. This is just weather. We can cope with weather. And mostly they did. For children, at least at first, this was magic, pure magic. Schools closed meant freedom, the biggest adventure ever. The whole world turned into a playground. The biggest playground you'd ever seen. Snow forts that lasted weeks because the snow didn't melt. Elaborate constructions, walls, tunnels, towers. Kids from different streets building competing forts. Snowball battles that became legendary. Territories established. The kids from the next road are invading. All hands on deck. Sledding down every hill. Tea trays taken from the kitchen. Baking sheets. Proper sledges if you were lucky enough to have one. Flying down slopes, crashing in piles at the bottom, laughing so hard you couldn't breathe. Coming home soaked and frozen. Your mum sighing at more wet clothes, but sending you back out after you'd warmed up and changed because what else were you going to do? Everyone was bored, restless, stuck inside when not playing outside. Rivers frozen solid, ponds, lakes, reservoirs, all frozen. Children skating on them, on boots, on shoes. Proper skates if you were lucky, the kind that clamped onto your shoes. Adults joining in, whole communities on the ice, the sound of it, blades scraping, shouts, laughter, the occasional crash as someone fell. The ice sometimes 6, 8 inches thick, thick enough for adults, safe enough that parents allowed it, which tells you how thick it was. This wasn't fragile ice, this was solid. People who'd never skated in their lives, sliding, falling, helping each other up, holding onto your friend's hand as you both slid forward. Chains of children holding hands, skating together. The bravest ones going fast, showing off until they hit a rough patch and went flying. Every child's dream. No school for weeks. Your parents worried about missed education, about falling behind, about making up the work later. But you... This was freedom. This was the best winter of your life. Building snowmen taller than your dad. Proper ones, 3 huge snowballs stacked up. Finding stones for eyes, carrots for noses. Old scarves, old hats. Competitions in every street for the best snowman. Some streets had dozens. A whole army of snowmen. Snow battles that lasted all day. Territories established. The kids from Milton Road versus the kids from Park Avenue. Forts built. Ammunition stockpiles. Battle plans. All in fun. All exhausting. All absolutely brilliant. Coming home at dusk. Fingers numb. Faces red. Boots caked in ice. Your gloves soaked through. Feet wet. But grinning. Absolutely grinning. That moment when your gloves got wet and your fingers screamed with cold. That specific pain. Not quite numbness, not quite burning. Worse, trying to warm them was almost unbearable. Putting frozen fingers near the fire hurt. It really hurt. But you had to. Gradually warming them up, the blood flow returning, the pain fading. The way snow got inside your coat, down your neck, melting against your skin. Wet and cold and miserable, but somehow not caring at the time because you were having too much fun. The taste of snowflakes on your tongue, clean, pure, cold. Everyone did it. Testing to see if you could catch them. Tilting your head back, mouth open, waiting for snowflakes to land on your tongue. Boys making yellow snow warnings. Gross, disgusting. The girls rolling their eyes but secretly laughing. The girls building better snow sculptures anyway. More artistic, more careful. Everyone secretly impressed, but nobody admitting it. Those endless snow days. Every day the same, but somehow not boring. Every day an adventure. Freedom you'd never had before and would never have again. For those few weeks, for children at least, life was magical. But Britain was falling apart. Transportation collapsed completely. Roads impassable across most of the country. Railways frozen. Not just snow on the tracks, the points were frozen solid. points that switched trains from one track to another, frozen, couldn't move them, trains stranded where they stopped, passengers trapped for hours, sometimes overnight, sitting in cold carriages, rescue teams walking through snow bringing food, blankets, hot drinks, people abandoning trains, walking along the tracks to the nearest station, then walking home from there if they could. Heathrow closed, Britain's main airport shut down, runways buried, planes grounded, business halted, international trade affected, goods not arriving, deliveries not leaving, docks frozen, ships trapped in ice, some trapped for the entire winter, sitting in frozen harbours, unable to move, the economy suffering, goods not moving anywhere, deliveries not arriving anywhere, shortages everywhere, the government calling in help, the RAF and Army mobilised, helicopters dropping supplies to villages cut off for weeks, food, coal, medicine, parcels dropped from the sky to communities that couldn't be reached any other way, soldiers clearing roads, fighting a losing battle. They'd clear a road and snow filled it in again overnight, but still trying, still working, military vehicles, the only things that could move, heavy trucks, tanks, bulldozers, children excited to see them, adults relieved, farmers facing nightmare scenarios, livestock trapped, sheep buried under snow, farmers digging frantically with shovels, with hands, trying to find them, finding some alive, huddled together under snowdrifts, somehow surviving, finding many dead, frozen solid, chickens frozen in coops, water troughs solid ice, breaking the ice 3 times a day so animals could drink, cattle huddled in barns, the lucky ones, food running low, hay running out, farmers feeding them what they had, rationing it, hoping the thaw would come before they ran out completely, hospitals struggling to cope, ambulances couldn't reach emergencies, patients couldn't reach hospitals, doctors making house calls on foot, trudging through snow with medical bags. January ended. Surely, people thought, surely it would ease now. February would be better. Spring was coming. It had to end. But temperatures kept falling. February brought more snow. In some places, heavier snow than January. People starting to wonder if it would ever end. If this was the new normal. If Britain had somehow shifted climate zones and this was just life now. The novelty wearing off. Even children getting tired of snow. Yes, it was still fun. Yes, they still played. But weeks of it, weeks of cold, wet clothes, numb fingers, limited food, even kids got tired. Adults exhausted from constant cold. The relentless effort of just staying warm, shoveling snow, hauling coal, keeping fires going, fetching water when pipes froze, cooking, washing, all of it harder. All of it taking 3 times as long. Everything was a struggle. Simple tasks became ordeals. Washing clothes impossible. You couldn't hang them outside. They'd freeze solid, stiff as boards, literally stiff. Stand them up and they'd stay standing. Bring them in and wait for them to thaw before you could fold them. Hanging them inside meant damp mildew, the smell of wet fabric that never quite dried. But you had to wash clothes. Children's clothes constantly wet from playing, adults' clothes from trudging to work. You couldn't just stop washing, so your mum fought that battle every single day, washing, attempting to dry, failing, trying again, cooking on the coal range if you had one, temperamental at best, too hot, not hot enough, never quite right. If you didn't have a range, cooking over or near the fire, pots hanging over flames, burning on one side, cold on the other, otherwise cold meals, bread, cheese, whatever didn't need heating, filling but miserable, tea, endless cups of tea, the kettle always on. Tea was warmth, tea was comfort, tea was the British solution to everything, including freezing to death, cup after cup after cup. The only warmth some people got, coal stocks depleting everywhere, families rationing themselves, decisions every day. Keep the fire going during the day, let it die at night to save coal. Or keep it going low overnight, wake to a barely warm house, but but at least the fire's still alive. Every family with their own strategy, every family running low, every family worried, food supplies irregular, milk when the milkman could get through, bread from the baker if he'd managed to bake, vegetables from wherever you could find them, tinned food running low, fresh food non-existent, making do with what you had, making it last, the wartime mentality returning completely. People who'd lived through the war, who'd lived through rationing, through making do, through genuine hardship, they knew how to do this. They'd done it before, but this was nearly 20 years later. They thought they were done with this, done with rationing, with making do, with not knowing if supplies would come. Young parents who'd been children during the war, now with their own children, thinking they'd give them better, give them plenty, give them security. And instead, here they were again, running low, rationing, making do. Early March, finally. Temperatures rose, not much, just above freezing, but enough. The snow began to melt, slowly at first. Drip, drip from roofs, icicles that had hung for weeks finally giving way, falling, shattering on the ground. Then faster, melting, accelerating. All that snow, all that ice becoming water, and that created its own disaster. Floods everywhere. All that snow and ice, 10 weeks of it, turning to water. Where did it go? Into the ground, into streams, into rivers, rivers overflowing, banks bursting, water flooding roads, flooding fields, flooding basements. The freeze replaced by deluge, one disaster into another. But at least the thaw meant it was ending. At least winter was finally giving up its grip. Burst pipes everywhere, pipes that had frozen, now thawing, splitting, water damage, ceilings collapsing from waterlogged plaster, months of repairs ahead, insurance claims, arguments about what was covered, but at least it was over, at least the worst was over. Gardens revealed as snow retreated, flattened, destroyed, fences down, plants dead, everything that had been buried for weeks now exposed, and it was ugly, the mess underneath, rubbish, debris, everything people had thrown out or lost over the winter, dead birds, dead animals, the reality of winter's toll. Britain looked battered, beaten, roads damaged, buildings damaged, infrastructure damaged, but surviving, still here, still standing. The relief was physical, tangible, walking outside without that immediate slap of cold, without your breath catching, without your nostrils freezing, without pain, seeing grass again, actual grass, green, alive, mud, brown, thick, messy mud, beautiful mud because it meant the ground was thawing, hearing birds. They'd been quiet during the worst of it, now returning, singing, the sound of spring, of life returning, children playing without gloves, jackets unzipped, running around without that restriction of layers upon layers, still cold by today's standards, but compared to what they'd endured, it felt tropical. Washing, drying outside, your mum hanging sheets on the line, and they actually dried, properly dried, not frozen, not damp, actually dry. The smell of line-dried washing, the joy on her face, the milk arriving unfrozen, cream still liquid, bottles that you could actually pour from, small joys becoming celebrations, things that had been normal 3 months ago now feeling like luxuries. Your mum actually smiling at the temperature, looking at the thermometer, seeing it above freezing, smiling. That hadn't happened in weeks. Your dad not shoveling, coming home from work, not immediately grabbing the shovel, walking up a clear path, going straight inside, the relief on his face, life returning to something like normal, buses running again, trains running, cars dug out, roads cleared, shops restocked, life resuming. But nothing felt quite normal, nothing felt quite the same. You'd been through something, Britain had been through something, and it showed. The statistics would eventually show the scale of it. 10 weeks of continuous cold, from late December 1962 to early March 1963. 10 weeks, 70 days. Over 2 months of Britain frozen solid. The coldest winter since 1740, 223 years, more than 2 centuries of winters, and nothing had been this cold. Over 60 days below freezing across most of Britain, not dipping below freezing at night and warming during the day, staying below freezing, day and night, for 60 days. Some places never saw above freezing for 2 months straight. 2 months. The sea froze for miles off the coast. Sea water, salt water, frozen solid, ships trapped in ice at dock, the Thames partly frozen, not the whole river, but sections, ice thick enough to stand on. Economic damage in the millions. In 1963, money, crops destroyed, an entire season of vegetables lost, ground frozen too hard to harvest root vegetables, farmers' whole income for the year gone, livestock lost, chickens, sheep, cattle, thousands of animals dead, infrastructure damaged, roads broken by ice, pipes burst across the country, buildings damaged by snow weight, by water, by freeze-thaw cycles, railways needing extensive repairs, the cost enormous. But changes came afterward. Weather forecasting improved. The Met Office embarrassed by their inability to predict the severity. Investing in better technology, better models, better ways to warn people. Winter weather warnings became standard. Emergency planning enhanced. Local councils developing proper snow plans, where to get equipment, where to put people in emergencies, how to coordinate response. None of that existed before. After 63, it had to exist. Winter preparations taken more seriously. Grit supplies, snow ploughs, emergency services ready. All things that seemed obvious afterward but hadn't been prioritised before. Housing gradually improved. Central heating slowly becoming standard, not a luxury. It took years, decades really. Most houses didn't get central heating until the 70s. But the process started. People recognised that one-fire heating wasn't enough. Britain's housing stock needed upgrading, better insulation, double glazing. All of this came later, but the impetus started here. Started with recognition that British houses were inadequate for British winters. But that took years. For most people who'd lived through 63, life continued as before afterward. Same houses, same heating. Just hoping desperately it wouldn't happen again. And praying, actually praying that next winter would be normal, mild, boring, anything but this. Ask anyone who lived through the winter of 1963. Anyone, ask them about it. Watch their face change. They'll tell you exactly where they were, what they were doing, how cold it was. They'll tell you specific moments, crystalline memories, sharp and clear decades later. Scratching frost off bedroom windows, that specific action, the feel of it, the sound of fingernail on ice, the way the ice fell in chunks, the brief clear spot you could see through before your breath made it fog again, walking to school through snow tunnels, the paths carved by adults that you followed, the walls of snow on either side higher than your head, feeling like an explorer, feeling like Scott of the Antarctic, being part of something big, something historic. The one warm room where the family huddled, that living room, the coal fire, the entire family's life condensed into that one space for 10 weeks. The closeness, the arguments, the games, the radio, the togetherness, forced, yes, but also real. The taste of frozen milk thawed by the fire, slightly different from normal milk, slightly separated, but you drank it anyway because it was all there was. The sound of snow crunching, that squeak, that specific unmistakable sound. Hear it now, and you're transported back to being a child, to those endless white streets, to that winter. The smell of coal smoke, thick and acrid and somehow comforting. Every house, every chimney putting out that smoke. The smell of winter, the smell of survival, the smell of home, the feeling of finally getting warm, after being outside, after walking home from school, after helping your dad shovel, coming inside, going straight to the fire, standing there until you were almost too hot. That feeling, relief, physical relief, warmth soaking into your bones. Those memories stayed. They stay still. People in their 70s now, talking about the winter they were 7 years old, the winter they were 17, the winter they were 27. It marked them, marked everyone who lived through it, not as trauma exactly, not for most people, but as a defining moment, a line in their lives, before the freeze, during the freeze, after the freeze. Today we have central heating, thermostats that keep every room warm, not just one room, every room. Bedrooms warm enough to sleep in without coats on top of blankets. Bathrooms warm enough for leisurely baths. Double glazing, triple glazing in new builds. Insulation, cavity walls, lofts properly insulated. Houses that hold heat, that keep cold out. Weather warnings, apps on your phone telling you snow is coming, telling you exactly when, how much, how long. Councils pre-gritting roads, snow ploughs ready, emergency services prepared. We're warmer, safer, more comfortable. A winter like 63 wouldn't hit us the same way, couldn't hit us the same way. The infrastructure is better, the preparation is better, the houses are better. People would still die, yes, accidents would still happen, but not the wholesale crisis, not the complete shutdown, not the 10 weeks of Britain frozen solid. We've progressed, genuinely progressed. That's not nostalgia talking or rose-tinted glasses. Life is genuinely easier now. But something was lost too, the community pulling together, not because it was organized, not because someone told them to, but because they had to, because everyone was in the same situation and helping each other was the only way through. Neighbours actually knowing each other, not just knowing their names, actually knowing them, checking on them, caring about them. Mrs. Jones taking soup to Mr. Patel, children checking on the old lady, communities functioning as communities, children playing outside all day, making their own fun, creating their own adventures, not supervised, not organized, not structured, just playing, building snow forts, having snowball fights, skating on frozen ponds, freedom and independence and imagination, the resilience, the humour, the determination. The British stiff upper lip, for all it's mocked now, was real. That refusal to panic, that ability to joke in the face of hardship, that stubbornness that kept the postman walking his route, kept the milkman delivering, kept people going to work through waist-deep snow. The way hardship brought people closer together, not apart, not blaming, not fighting, but together. Shared suffering creating shared bonds, community that meant something, not romanticizing. The winter of 63 was terrible, dangerous, deadly. Nobody wants to repeat it. Nobody wishes for those conditions again. But for those who lived through it, there's something. A memory of a time when things were harder, but somehow, in some ways, better. When community meant something. When neighbours were neighbours. When children were independent. When people were tougher, or maybe just had no choice but to be tough. Ask them. Ask those who were there. What do you remember most? Not the hardship itself, not the cold, not the difficulty, not the danger. They remember all that, yes, but what they talk about, what they come back to, isn't the suffering. It's how they got through it, together. The warmth wasn't just from the coal fire, it was from people, from community, from neighbours and friends and strangers who became neighbours. Mrs. Jones bringing soup, the postman still trying, children helping elderly neighbours, communities refusing to be beaten by snow, by cold, by anything. That stubborn, bloody-minded British determination. We've been through worse. We'll get through this. They remember the shared experience. Everyone in the same situation, everyone struggling, everyone helping. No judgment about who had more or less, who was coping or not coping. Just help offered, help accepted, help given back when you could. They remember the stories, the humour, the wireless broadcasts, the jokes, the laughter even in hardship, especially in hardship, because what else could you do? They remember being young, being children, playing in snow that might never come again, having adventures, being independent, being free in ways children aren't free anymore. They remember their parents, working so hard to keep them warm, fed, safe, the effort it took, the worry on their faces they tried to hide, the relief when spring finally came. The Great Freeze of 1963 was brutal, dangerous, damaging, deadly. Nobody who lived through it wants to repeat it. Nobody wishes those conditions on anyone. But for those who lived through it, it's a memory that defines them, that shapes them, that marks them as part of a generation that endured something. I survived the winter of '63, not said boastfully, not said proudly in a chest-puffing way, but said with quiet certainty, with the knowledge that they did something difficult, that they got through something hard, that they're part of a shared history, a badge of honor, a shared experience, a reminder of what they endured and how they endured it. Together, because that's the word that keeps coming back. Together, not alone, not isolated, not every family for themselves, together, as communities, as neighbours, as Britain. The winter Britain froze solid for 3 months, 10 weeks of ice and snow and cold that tested everyone, that pushed everyone to their limits, that showed what people were capable of when they had to be. It wasn't perfect, it was cold, hard, frightening, dangerous, but it was survived. Not just survived, endured, got through, came out the other side, and in enduring it, in surviving it, in getting through it together, something was proven about community, about resilience, about the human ability to cope with hardship, about the British character for all that's become a cliché. The winter of '63, when Britain froze solid, when normal life stopped, when survival became the goal, but also when neighbours helped neighbours, when communities pulled together, when children played in a winter wonderland, when the postman still delivered, when the milkman still came, when people kept going because that's what you did. You kept going. If you lived through it, you know. You know exactly what this means. The ice on the inside of windows, the one warm room, the endless snow, the community that got you through. It wasn't perfect. It was cold, hard, frightening, but it was ours, our generation, our experience, our memory, our winter, and we'll never forget it. Drop a comment with your story. Where were you in the winter of '63? How old were you? What do you remember most? The cold, the snow, the community, the fun, the fear, all of it? Share this with someone who was there, someone who remembers, someone who'll understand, who'll nod along reading this, remembering their own specific moments, their own specific memories. Keep these memories alive, share them, talk about them, write them down, tell your children, your grandchildren, because they need to know, they need to understand, not to make them feel guilty about central heating and double glazing, not to bore them with back in my day stories, but to preserve something important, to record something that mattered, to pass on the memory of a time that shaped a generation. These stories matter. These memories matter. You matter. What you lived through matters. What you survived matters. How you survived it matters. The winter of '63, when Britain froze solid for 3 months, when life stopped, when survival took precedence, when community meant everything, when the coal fire was life, when children played in a white world, when the postman still delivered, when neighbours were neighbours. That winter, your winter, our winter, it's worth remembering, worth preserving, worth sharing, because the winter Britain froze solid also proved something about endurance, about community, about the human spirit, about what people can do when they have to. The Great Freeze of 1963, when Britain froze solid, when hearts stayed warm. If this brought back memories, hit like. Subscribe to keep these stories alive. Share it with someone who remembers. Drop a comment with where you were, what you remember, your story. Because every story matters. Every memory matters. You matter. The winter of '63, never forgotten, never will be.